We're back. I'm here with Dick Howe Jr. He is the Register of Deeds here for the Middlesex North County. Is that the best way to describe it, or Lowell, or?
It's the Middlesex North District.
District, okay.
Yeah, and with registries of deeds in several counties, Middlesex, Essex, Worcester, and a couple of others, they're divided into multiple registry districts. So we cover the towns of Billerica, Chelmsford, Carlisle, Drake, Dunstable, Lowell, Tewksbury, Tingsboro, Westford, and Wilmington. So they all record the documents in Lowell.
That's a pretty impressive list to memorize.
Yeah, well, I've been doing it for a while, so if you do it alphabetically, it's easier.
Tell us a little bit about what's going on with the registry. I know, you were really on the forefront of pushing technology back in the day, and it's actually amazing, I think, how much we take it for granted now, but you really were one of the first registrars to kind of implement that stuff. So tell us kind of what takes place now at the registry.
Sure. Well, it never stops because technology always advances, and for quite a while, since maybe 2005, you've been able to go to our website, which is lowelldeeds.com, and you can go all the way back to the year 1629 and get any document that's ever been recorded there. So we're actually about to start our third generation of images of these documents. The first we scanned from microfilm. That was pretty good if you weren't used to anything better. Then we actually cut apart the books and we scanned right from the books, which was a big improvement because historically registry records have been annotated. For instance, if you had a mortgage and that was in the book, when you paid off the mortgage and recorded the discharge, we would go to the page where the mortgage is and write in the margin, say, see the discharge. So by scanning the actual books, we captured that. But a funny thing's happened is some of those images aren't that great, and people will email or call and say, I can't read this. So what I do is I find the original, I take out my cell phone, I snap a picture, and I just email it from my phone. And the clarity of just a simple cell phone picture is incredible because you can zoom in and read all these little tiny numbers. So we just bought a pretty affordable camera, just a Rebel camera like you might buy, to photograph your family, and kind of a stand and some lights. And so we're going to start actually taking pictures of all these documents. So that'll be the third generation of our technology.
Wow, that's pretty impressive just to use. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's super high tech, but at the same time, if you get the clarity that you're looking for, I think that's.
Yeah, well, I mean, what amazes me is that, and it's something that you people might encounter in your real estate world, is that at a closing, people always come with driver's license and say, oh, where's your photocopier? I need to make copies of these licenses. And I'm like, just take out your phone and take a picture of it. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's a much better quality image.
One of the things that if you want visionary here, at some point they've now started to roll out cities and towns their GIS mapping, which kind of like plots out all of these properties, and typically within that they'll have a vision database where they'll have like the property record card for each property, and then obviously within that they have like the book and page, but maybe at some point they could link up like vision database GIS mapping with the registry, so you could actually just click on the link and it would bring you directly to the deed for that property that you were looking at that has a plot map. I don't know.
Well, we've actually, I've been talking about that for a long time, and we're pretty far advanced. The town of Chelmsford would really like to do that, others, Westford, Lowell. One of the challenges is there's not a common field in our database and the town database. And you might think, well, the address is a common field, but there's no official address. You can really call your property almost anything you want. The
right.
Post office has one, the assessors have another, 911 has another. And so if, in the city we encounter it more, you have like 8-10 Main Street.
Right.
Well, a third of the documents say that, a third say 8 Main Street, and a third say 10 Main Street. They all apply to the same document, but if you ask the computer to find 8-10, it's not going to find the other two because to the computer it's not the same property, it's a different value. But we're working, the newest 911 system, which is designed with cell phones in mind and not fixed addresses, has much more precise, it's like an official list of addresses for the state. And we're trying to figure out a way to incorporate that into our database. And then all of this linkage that you see as being very valuable will just kind of fall into place.
I mean, it's more of a convenience factor because at some point I could go onto littledeeds.com and just type in the booking page because it is provided. So I guess it's just taking that one less step of, clicking.
I wouldn't use the term just convenience. If you have to look up 100 properties a day and it takes you an extra minute to do each one, that's an hour and whatever hour, 40 minutes of your time that you could save. So I think it's kind of incumbent on us to make it easier for folks who use the site to do it efficiently, and that's what I've always tried. I think one of the things I benefit from is before I was the Register of Deeds, I was kind of on your side of the counter. I was a lawyer practicing recording documents, and I was like, oh, why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? And so fortunately, I'm in a position where I can change things.
That's awesome. Well, you've done great things. One thing I was curious about, maybe the general public is curious about this too, is when you record something at the registry, you're really recording that for the world to know about. It becomes public record. We do a lot of real estate, so if you sell a property, the actual purchase price of a property becomes public record and it's knowledge to everybody. Is there a way to not provide that as public record? Can you actually not provide the purchase price of a property at the registry?
No.
Is it a law? Is it a law, or is it?
Well, you have to state the exact price because that's how we calculate the deeds excise tax. There's a tax imposed on and it's based on the amount of the sale. But a situation occurs sometimes when people don't want that information out there. But the whole system benefits from the free exchange of information to an extent that it outweighs an individual's interest in privacy. And an individual, if they had a really compelling reason, say it was a domestic abuse situation or somebody in a sensitive line of work, if they planned it in advance, they could create a trust that didn't have their name associated with it and have the property deeded into the trust, and nobody would know who it was that was actually living there, at least from our records. So that's how you would address an extreme circumstance of privacy. I used to say, well, the records are public, but having information in a book in a dusty shelf in the registry is a lot less public than having it available to the whole world on the internet. So we try very hard to keep things like social security numbers and bank account numbers. Every once in a while, back in the 90s and the 80s, banks required people to put their social security number on mortgages. And we think we've got a lot of them, but even yesterday somebody called and they were kind of distraught. They said, I just saw that my social security number. So we just black it out and rescan it, and it's fixed in a minute or two.
Yeah, just do a redaction.
Right.
Well, I was thinking about it more in terms of maybe this could be a new revenue generation where you pay additional money. Certainly it's available to a certain subsection of groups, right? Because one of the reasons that people need to know about the sale of your property might be, say, a bank that's putting, a loan on the property, and they need to put that out to the general public that they have first rights as far as foreclosure and all of that. But maybe you could pay an additional fee on top of it and have the actual purchase price blocked from the general public.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard a strong reason why.
Well, you're a Kennedy, and you just don't want people to know how much money you're making on the sale of every.
Then you would have it go into a trust. But a funny example came up when Fenway Park was sold quite a while ago, and my colleague in Suffolk County was all set for this humongous tax stamp check to come in, and there was none because the buyers bought the stock of the corporation, and so the real estate was owned by the corporation. So the real estate wasn't sold to a new owner; it was actually the ownership of the corporation, and that happens once in a while. And I do think it's kind of it's sometimes a dodge to escape paying taxes, but what isn't in big business.
How do you try to keep and manage the flow of so much information? Do you have a large staff that's working on it constantly, or how does that?
No, actually, when I took over in 1995, we had 36 employees, and we're down to 15 now. And it's just been through attrition. And it's mostly because, well, the employees are all very good and they work very diligently, but the technology has just allowed us to work more efficiently. With recording documents, for instance, most people are familiar with bringing a piece of paper to the registry. We key in information from that, then we scan it. That's how it gets on record. But since 2005, we've been doing electronic recording. So you can do your closing at a lawyer's office, and the lawyer would just scan the document, send it to us through a secure website, and we just look at it, make sure, yeah, it's in this registry, we can read it, and we press a button, and it's recorded. And the fees get paid through a bank transfer from the lawyer's account to our account, and it just all happens almost automatically. So it's a great efficiency for us. It takes us a lot less time, but it's also great for the closing because everybody, while the seller's telling the buyer which day the garbage gets picked up, the deed is already on record, and you can disperse the funds and give the person the keys, and everybody goes on their way. So that's an example of how technology has allowed us to work kind of faster and better.
I actually think it's helpful too, because as a realtor or even as a buyer or a seller, you're not getting tased as you walk through the front of the courthouse. That has nothing to do with you, but the security level there is a lot higher than it has been in many, many years before, and so closing there is not as
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's an active courthouse. There just was a murder trial that finished, and a verdict came in on it today. So, and we have family court there on Fridays. And so there's a lot of tension in the building, not in the registry, but because there's only one entrance, people come through that. It's not going to get any better because we are going to move into the new courthouse.
Okay.
Which it's not too far from the current one. It's right off the Lord Overpass, if you're familiar with it, in the Hamilton Canal District. But the construction's underway. It's going to be a 7-story building. And it's supposed to be up and enclosed by the end of this calendar year, and that'll take 2 years to complete the inside. But the Registry of Deeds will be inside that, along with Superior Court, District Court, Housing Court, Family Court, and Juvenile Court. So it'll be quite a complex.
When I was younger, fortunately I've had like a lot of run-ins with the registry. When I was younger, I used to record deeds for attorneys, and I would stand in line for hours, and if it was at the end of the month, they give me like 3 different deeds or mortgages or whatever, and I have to go stand in line, record one, then they kick me back to the back of the line, then I do it again. So the other day I was there, and I was like, wow, I can just walk right up to the counter. This is the first time that's ever happened to me. And I think part of that's because of the fact that you guys have been able to accommodate people recording deeds and mortgages at lawyers' offices, which I think is extremely helpful.
Well, that accounts for more than 50% of all our recordings, and stuff that comes by regular mail or from FedEx is 20%, so only 30% gets brought in by a human being. So it used to be at 8:30 when we opened, there was a big line of lawyers because they all wanted to record and then get to the Lowell District Court by 9 to answer the call of the list. But we might not see our first human customer until 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning. So it's definitely shifted the way people use the registry.
What are the biggest challenges you see from a customer? Is it just educating people on how the process works? I mean, I know people can record their own documents, so do you tend to have people come in and not know how the process is, or?
Yes, I think one thing that's happened maybe in the last 20 years is the gap between what it costs to hire a lawyer and what people feel they can afford has grown, and this is an area where you really need a lawyer because it's pretty complicated, and if you try to do it yourself, you can really mess up the way your house is owned. But a lot of people do come in kind of to see if they can do something themselves or to investigate themselves. So we have a customer service office with 4 people, and including me. If you walk into the registry, you're just as likely to have me help you as anybody else. And we can't give legal advice, but we can provide sort of education about what the law is. And the actual level of understanding that the average American has about how real estate law works is pretty low. Most people compare it to how you own your car. For instance, if you finance your car through GMAC and you pay it off, you get your title. You don't have it before then. Well, when people pay off their mortgage, they come striding up to the recording counter and they say, I just paid off my mortgage, I want my deed. And I say, well, you should have had the deed a week after the closing, and they think the house is in jeopardy. So we give them a certified copy and they go on their way. I think anything we or people like you can do to raise the level of education that the average homeowner has in how real estate works would be very helpful.
It's actually, if you have never been on the Lowell Registry of Deeds, you can actually find a whole host of information that I find pretty fascinating. But I bought a property in North Chelmsford, and one of the things I did was actually went back and actually looked at all of the prior owners before me, because there's a lot of history that's also kind of involved with this stuff. Do you ever get involved kind of from that aspect of it?
I do. I've actually given a lot of talks to genealogy groups, and for instance, a few years ago I did one at the Chelmsford Library. I've done it more and more often about how you can use our records. If people are interested either exploring the history of their family in a house or the house that they live in, the best way to do it is to actually go to the website, lowelldeeds.com, and email me. The emails all come to me, but send an email and say, I'd like some information about how to research the history of my house. And we've got some really good handouts about step-by-step how to do that, but all kinds of other questions. You've paid off your mortgage, a co-owner has died, you have a dispute with your neighbor over a fence being, encroaching on the boundary, and at least we can help educate people so they can decide for themselves whether they need a lawyer or not.
One of the things I think is really confusing for people is registered land, unregistered land, certified land. You've got plans of land. Is that stuff that comes up as questions for you when people are trying to search those type of?
Yes, there's two recording systems in Massachusetts. In this registry, the bulk of it is registered land. If you're looking for something under registered land, which is the default search, and you can't find it, it might recorded land. I'm sorry, recorded land. Even I get mixed up. Recorded land is 90% of all the property. Registered land is about 10%. Registered land was created in 1898, which is pretty late in the registry's life. And it was part of the progressive era in American politics, where things were going to be very systematized and logical. And it is kind of logical. It actually is like how you own your car. If you buy registered land, we create a certificate of title that says you're the owner of the property, and you really don't have to look beyond that. And a nice thing about it is the state guarantees title to the property. So if there was a title defect, you would be reimbursed by the state. The downside to it is because the state guarantees title, we're very strict about what we will record, and so it's often difficult to consummate a transaction with registered land. That's why lawyers don't like it. That accounts for only about 10% of all the property. So look at the default search, recorded land first. If there should be something there and you can't find it, don't give up. Say, oh, that might be registered land.
Well, one of the things I always encourage people to do is to get title insurance, because even at the registry level, it's really would be very difficult for you guys to detect fraud or things of that nature. Is that true?
Yes and yes. You absolutely should get title insurance, and the way I remember it working, you were required to get it usually by your lender for the amount of the loan, and then it was an option to get it for the rest of the value of the house. For the small amount of money you're paying, you'd be crazy not to get it, because it isn't just another layer of protection. And as much as people are very diligent about doing title searches, it's a complex area, so it's easy for a mistake to be made somewhere along the line. And it's just really nice that when that mistake is made, you just call your title insurance company and they take care of everything.
One of the areas where I've found it to be useful is, and this is just the recent past, is we've had a lot of short sale activity that has taken place, and somebody buys a property that was once short saled, and they find out that there weren't proper discharges or things recorded afterwards, even though they should have probably been recorded. They never actually made it to the registry. And if they don't make it to the registry, there's probably not really much you can do, right, other than to have them hunt down the bank or the institution that should have probably recorded it, or?
Yes, yeah, and what happened during the boom times from 2003 to 2007, people got sloppy with the documents they were recording. We recorded everything people would give us, but mortgages went from, when I started practicing law 30 years ago, most mortgages were still held by the local bank, and the loan officer knew the homeowner and could keep track of things. But mortgages now are part of high finance, and they would bounce from the registry of deeds to Wall Street in hours, not days or weeks. And because of the speed of the finance system, the real estate law system didn't keep up with it. And so, yeah, when that mortgage was assigned to Deutsche Bank, nobody recorded an assignment in the register of deeds. And so the homeowner stops paying the mortgage, Deutsche Bank comes in and forecloses, has an auction, buys the house, sells it to you, and then somewhere down the line somebody's doing a title search and say, hey, there's no assignment of the mortgage to Deutsche Bank. They did not have the legal right to do the foreclosure. And you're sitting there, the innocent homeowner who has a title defect now, and that's where title insurance comes in.
And it's not that title insurance necessarily will make it right so much as they'd at least try to make you whole from a financial perspective, right? Because
yeah.
I once heard a story, I don't know if this is true, but maybe a gentleman in Drake had purchased a home and then found out that it was actually not his because the ex-wife and her boyfriend showed up and posed as the
well, not only is it true, it was the town manager
that's
that
right,
happened to. It was Dennis Peendak, and he showed up at the closing to buy this house, and the male seller and a woman was there, and she identified herself verbally as the wife. She signed the deed. The lawyer notarized it without asking for identification, and it all got recorded, and the town manager moves into his new house, and this other woman comes walking into the house, and she says, what are you doing in my house? And he says, I just bought it. And she says, no, I'm the part owner. So yeah, that really happens. And I think the title insurance company paid off what was the soon-to-be ex-wife, who it was the girlfriend of the husband who showed up at the closing posing as the wife. At least that's my recollection. That was about 30 years ago. That was.
It just gets expensive, though. At some point, to try to defend title could go on for a long time, depending on how contentious it gets. And
yeah, and if you're the homeowner, it's okay. You just keep paying your mortgage, and it's going to get straightened out. The dilemma comes when you lose your job, your spouse loses her job, somebody gets sick, you get transferred to California, because you're kind of frozen into the house. You can't. Nobody's going to buy it.
Right.
Because there's a title problem with it. So until you get it cleaned up, it's you're kind of stuck there.
Tell us a little bit. I know you write some blogs and things like that about history. Is that something that you're excited about, that you enjoy doing?
Yes, I mean I love history, particularly local history. So I have my own website. It's called richardhowe.com. And it's about Lowell politics and Lowell history. And it's kind of a catch-all of whatever I want to write about. There's some other people that write on it. That's led me to, I think I'm on my third book now. I have 2 books by Arcadia Publishing, which are photographic history books of Lowell. And then I self-published a book recently. It's called Lowell Municipal Elections, 1965 to 2015. And that actually, my dad was elected to the Lowell City Council in 1965, and he served continuously till 2005.
Wow.
So we had all these newspaper clippings from election returns hanging around the house, and those kind of questions always come up in local political circles. So what year was this guy mayor? When was this city manager in office? So I compiled it all into a book, and this self-publishing is great. You just send off a file, and 3 days later you have a box of books on your front porch.
I can actually appreciate that. I was actually looking through, I don't know why, but town meeting minutes of like 1984 through 86 here in Chelmsford, and there it's like, Dennis Reddy does this, Dennis Reddy does, I'm like, oh man, it's all about my dad.
No, and you grow up with it, and you've got all this material, and it's useful. So yeah, but then the other thing we do is tours, history tours. For instance, this weekend I'm doing a tour of the Lowell Cemetery. It's this coming Friday, May 12th at 1, and then Saturday, May 13th at 10 a.m. And those are very popular. We average about 100 people per tour. And then all throughout the summer we do a thing called Lowell Walks, which is Saturday morning walks. They all start at the National Park Visitor Center, and they all take about 90 minutes. They're free. There's a different tour guide each time, a different topic. And they're all listed on my website, which is richardhowe.com. So if you just go there and click on the calendar, you can see all that kind of stuff.
Wow, and you coordinate and line everybody up for that, or how does that all work?
Yeah, I guess I'm the general manager of it. I've been doing this. I took over from a Chelmsford resident, the cemetery tours. It was Catherine Goodwin who did it for like into her 80s, and then she looked for a volunteer to take over, and I did. And I just saw how much people enjoyed the experience of being together outside in a group and hearing good stories. I mean, from the time humans were human, like stories, right? And so because it was so popular at the cemetery tour, you're always trying to get more people into downtown Lowell, and I thought, well, let's see if it migrates into the city, and it did very well. And they start at 10 o'clock, they last 90 minutes, and so at 11:30 you've got 100 people who have just been walking around for 90 minutes, and you say, oh, go to a restaurant, have lunch, walk around. And so it's kind of a way to help the businesses in downtown Lowell too.
You know who tells a great story is Becky Warren here from
yes.
Chelmsford, and I know she does, I think, some of the Lowell Parks tours and things
yes,
like that. So
definitely.
It's really a great service. I'll tell you, a lot of people love history, and especially local. I mean, Lowell, I can't think of a place that has more history than Lowell.
Yeah, and I think one of the untapped areas of Lowell history is before it was Lowell, when it was, at least part of it was East Chelmsford for a time. Maybe I can come back some night in the future and talk a little bit about that sometime.
We'll have to cut another hour off of Town Talk to make it happen. So as far as the registry goes, if people do want to access it, right now it's going to be on, is it Gorham Street or?
Yeah, 360 Gorham Street, right at the end of the Lowell Connector. We're open from 8:30 till 4 o'clock every day, Monday through Friday. Our phone number is 978-322-9000, and the website is lowelldeeds.com. There's an email link from that. If you call when we're open, a human being will answer the phone very quickly. If you email, I get it. I get it on my phone. I used to reply to emails on Sunday mornings whenever I get them. Now I kind of wait till Monday unless it's something urgent. And I think we do provide a good level of service to anybody that has questions, so please don't hesitate to inquire if you do have a question.
I would agree with that. Does Tony Accardi still work at the registry, or is he retired?
Tony retired 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's living up in Wells, Maine now.
Tony trained me on the board operation back when he was he would do Paul Sullivan's
WLLH?
Yeah, WLLH. So that was my first foray into the public circle.
Well, he's a great guy, and I'm still in touch with him, so I'll mention that to him.
It's just amazing what a small world it is
Yes.
when it all comes together. So you think you'll run for one more term?
Definitely.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah. No, I love the job. There's always something new going on. So yeah, it is an elected office. I'm on the ballot next year in 2018. So please, I'd appreciate your vote at that time.
Well, I can't tell you how much we appreciate what you do until you actually deal with a registry that's not as high-tech as the Lowell registry, or Middlesex North, as we'll call it. You'll appreciate it.
Well,
So,
thank you. That's very kind.
Thank you. That's all the time we have. We appreciate you coming on Town Talk, and we'll catch you next time.